This notion of cancel culture, you've been living it. You've been on the receiving end of it for years and years and years. That's real. And Democrats need to own up to that. They've got to mature about this.
And look, Aaron, those aren't the only times that we found that he used it. He also used it a lot on social media. Look at a few of these right here. You see there, that is a lot of use of Latinx by him for somebody who said that nobody in his office has ever used that phrase.
So Gavin Newsom finally said something true. Shocking, right? I know most of you probably had to play that clip more than once just to be sure your ears weren't fooling you. Because let's be honest, when's the last time California's slick-haired governor actually dropped a real truth on live television instead of giving another polished, scripted soundbite? Exactly. It almost never happens. But then out of nowhere, while sitting across from Bill Maher of all people, Gavin Newsom did the unthinkable. He admitted that the Democratic Party has a problem. He admitted that cancel culture is real. He even nodded in agreement at the idea that Democrats are pushing themselves into a permanent minority if they don't wake up and change course. Wait, what? Did he really just agree with that? Yes, he did. And the look on Maher's face told the whole story. Even Bill Maher looked stunned, like he had just witnessed a solar eclipse. Gavin Newsom, the same man who lives in denial on a daily basis, suddenly uttered two shocking words. I agree. Now, before anyone gets too excited, let's slow down. Because if you've been following Gavin Newsom's career for any length of time, you know this man is about as genuine as a Hollywood smile. He didn't rise to the top of California politics by being brutally honest. He got there by being slick, by dodging, deflecting, distracting, and selling the California dream while the state fell apart behind him.
Fetterman was in the news today. He said, if you're talking about the Democratic Party, he said, if we don't get our shit together, we're going to be a permanent minority.
I agree.
And I see you're doing something about it. I applaud it. I think it's great. You've got this podcast. You're talking to people. You know, it's amazing to me that even that is controversial to some people. They call it platforming. If you talk to someone you don't agree with.
Yeah.
I feel like this country is divided into owners and healers. People think you can own the other side.
So when Newsom starts nodding along and talking about accountability, you have to stop and ask yourself, what's the angle here? What's the real play? Because this is politics, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks on the surface. I'll be honest with you, I don't believe for a second that Gavin Newsom suddenly had a come-to-Jesus moment about honesty. What I see is a man auditioning. I see a carefully scripted rebrand. Newsom knows California is in shambles under his watch. Homelessness is out of control. Businesses are fleeing. Crime is spiking. Families are being crushed by insane taxes and skyrocketing housing costs. He knows that his glossy image is starting to wear thin. So what's he doing? He's trying to reinvent himself. Instead of just being the over-polished politician with hair shinier than his record, he now wants to present himself as America's therapist, the healer-in-chief. And what's his big tool to heal the country? Believe it or not, a podcast. That's right. Gavin Newsom thinks he can fix America with a podcast. Call me crazy, but that doesn't sound like leadership. That sounds more like the plot of a bad Netflix spinoff. Because here's the reality. Nobody is tuning into Gavin's podcast to be healed. This isn't about bringing people together. This is about polishing his resume for 2028. That's the game. Political theater, nothing more.
DeSantis destroyed Gavin Newsom. Or people who want to talk and heal. And I feel like the next president's going to be, at least if it comes from this party, the Democratic Party, someone who wants to talk and heal. And I feel like we're doing that.
And let's talk about that podcast for a minute. Because he slips it into every conversation like it's some kind of casual afterthought. But trust me, it's not casual, it's calculated. He's using it as his big reset button, his way of showing he can reach across the aisle. He even bragged about having controversial guests like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk, as if that somehow makes him a fearless truth teller instead of a career politician rehearsing his presidential audition tape. But here's the funny part. While Gavin is out here playing healer, he accidentally gave away the truth. He admitted that the Democratic brand is toxic. His words, not mine, toxic.
It's really been interesting, the reaction to the podcast. I mean, we had some controversial figures on, I'll acknowledge that, and Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and some others. But you're right. I mean, this idea that we can't even have a conversation with the other side.
You have to. They won.
Thank you. That's it. Bottom line. And by the way, or the notion we just have to continue to talk to ourselves or we're in the same damn echo chamber. These guys are crushing us. The Democratic brand is toxic.
Think about that. The same man who helped make the Democratic brand toxic is now warning everyone else that it's toxic. That's like an arsonist standing in front of a burning building saying, wow, somebody really needs to do something about this fire. And don't forget, this is the same guy who once looked Californians straight in the eye and swore that nobody in his office ever used the word ladings. Remember that? He said it with a straight face, but the receipts say otherwise. There are clips, speeches, social media posts, you name it, where Gavin himself used the word repeatedly. So when he act like he doesn't even know where the term came from, that's classic Newsom. Deny, deflect, distract.
By the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah,
we agree?
but where did that even
No
go?
more Latinx, everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about?
But there was a person who used Latinx. It was actually a really important person. It was him. Right?
Yeah, that's right. And look, these aren't minor shifts. These are progressive issues that Gavin Newsom used to champion until fairly recently. And now he's not just walking away from them. He's sort of acting like they were never legitimate with that clip talking about lead.
That's why this rare slip of honesty was so shocking. Because if there's one thing Gavin Newsom excels at, it's pretending reality doesn't exist. And yet there he was, sitting across from Maher, admitting that Democrats are losing, admitting cancel culture is real, admitting the brand is toxic. Even if it only lasted for a moment, it felt like spotting a unicorn in downtown San Francisco. Unbelievable, rare, and gone in the blink of an eye. But let's pause here, because we both know one moment of honesty doesn't wipe away years of lies. Gavin Newsom built his entire career sugarcoating disasters. California has basically become a case study in failed leadership under his watch. Homelessness exploding, crime spiking, businesses packing up and leaving, families crushed under impossible living costs. That is Gavin's legacy. So forgive me if I'm not ready to hand him a medal for one tiny slip of honesty.
And those aren't the only times that we found that he used it. He also used it a lot on social media. Look at a few of these right here. You see there, that is a lot of use of Latinx by him for somebody who said that nobody in his office has ever used that.
If Newsom really wants to talk about accountability, maybe he should start with himself. He should own up to the mess he created in California before he lectures anyone else about what Democrats need to do. Because until he does that, every single word about accountability is just another line in his endless audition for presidency.
Notion of cancel culture, you've been living it. You've been on the receiving end of it for years and years and years. That's real. And Democrats need to own up to that. They've got to mature about that.
And speaking of the presidency, let's be real. Do you honestly see Gavin Newsom winning a national election? Be honest. This is the same guy who can't even run his own state. Voters in middle America are not lining up to embrace California's version of woke, high-tax, soft-on-crime politics. They're not waiting for Gavin to heal them with a shiny new podcast. What they want are real results. And Gavin has proven over and over that he's all talk and no action. But here's the kicker. Even as Gavin tries to rebrand himself as some kind of healer, he couldn't resist throwing a little shade. Did you catch the subtle jab at Kamala Harris? Because I did. He threw out a line about Democrats being too judgmental, talking in circles and not making sense. And let's be honest, if there's one Democrat who has turned word salad into an art form, it's Kamala. That was no accident. That was a shot. And what does that tell you? The cracks are showing. Even the party's darlings are turning on each other. Newsom versus Harris. You better believe that's coming. The Democratic Party is already fractured, and moments like this just make it worse.
The high water mark 2 weeks ago, and that was a CNN poll at 29% favorability. It's dropped in the NBC poll down to 27%. It's one thing to make noise, but you also have to make sense. And I think with this podcast and having the opportunity to dialogue with people I disagree with, it's an opportunity to try to find common ground and not take cheap shots. I'm not looking to put a spoke in the wheel of their, or at least a crowbar in the spokes of their wheel to trip them up, to your point. And I think it's important. Democrats, we tend to be a little more judgmental than we should.
Now, let's give Bill Maher some credit here. Because normally, Gavin Newsom is as scripted as a Hollywood teleprompter. He doesn't slip. He doesn't confess. And yet somehow, Maher backed him into a corner where he actually admitted the truth. Maybe that's why so many Democrats avoid Maher's show. They know he won't toss them softballs. He won't let them spin for an hour without pushback. He'll press, he'll prod, and eventually they'll either squirm or slip. And that's exactly what happened here. If Bill Maher can make slick Gavin Newsom admit that Democrats are toxic, just imagine what would happen if the rest of the Democratic elite had to face the same grilling. That's their worst nightmare. Because once the mask slips, once the polished image cracks, people see what's really underneath. And for Gavin Newsom, what's underneath isn't healing. It's hypocrisy.
KBLA yesterday with my friend Tavis Smiley. I'm an investor and a supporter of that station. And he said, who do you want for running president? I mentioned, I think you'd be good at the job. Not this year, we know. No, I know. But he said, I don't think he could win. I don't think he could win. He's too progressive coming from this state and what he's done in this state to win in any southern state, any red state.
At the end of the day, here's the bottom line. Gavin Newsom's sudden burst of honesty doesn't change anything. California is still a disaster under his leadership. He is still the architect of its decline, the governor who oversaw the exodus of families, businesses, and sanity from the Golden State. His shiny new podcast isn't about unity. It's about marketing. His brand of woke progressive politics isn't the future. It's a warning sign as, oh, if Democrats are banking on Newsom as their next big star in 2028, buckle up, because this isn't the solution. This is a symptom. The cracks are already showing. And when even Gavin Newsom starts admitting the truth, you know the Democratic Party's problems run deeper than they want to admit. But hey, that's just my take. What about you? Do you believe Gavin Newsom's honesty, or do you see it as just another calculated move from a career politician polishing his image for 2028? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you're enjoying this breakdown. Subscribe for more, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Trust me, the conversation is just getting started.